The obsidian throne sat in the center of a chamber carved from living volcanic rock. Rivers of molten lava flowed through channels in the floor, providing heat and light that made the entire space glow with an orange menace. Dragon Lord Kaine reclined on his throne, his scales catching the firelight and reflecting it back in shades of deep crimson and black. He was massive even in his humanoid form, standing over 7 feet tall with horns that curved back from his temples and eyes that glowed like burning coals. Around him, his court of dragon nobles lounged on heated stone benches, their own scales glittering in golds, silvers, and bronzes. The delegation from the surface kingdoms entered through the iron doors. They walked carefully across the heated floor, their enchanted boots the only thing protecting them from burns. Leading them was Ambassador Lyra Thorne, a woman of barely 30 years with dark hair tied back in a practical braid and eyes the color of storm clouds. She wore the gray robes of a diplomatic envoy, simple and unadorned, marking her as someone who valued function over fashion. Behind her came 2 guards and a scholar, all looking uncomfortable in the oppressive heat. Kaine watched them approach with barely concealed amusement. The surface dwellers were always the same, so fragile, so easily intimidated. They came to his realm because they needed something, and they would leave, having paid far more than they intended. It was always this way. Lyra stopped at the appropriate distance and bowed. It was a slight bow, respectful but not subservient. Kaine did not acknowledge it. Instead, he examined her the way one might examine an insect, curious but ultimately dismissive. "So this is a surface ambassador," he said. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "I expected someone older, someone with authority." "I speak with the full authority of the 7 surface kingdoms," Lyra replied evenly. Her voice did not waver despite the heat and the intimidating presence before her. "The 7 surface kingdoms." Kaine laughed, and smoke curled from his nostrils. 7 kingdoms of dirt farmers and stone masons. "Tell me, Ambassador, what could your kingdoms possibly offer that would interest the dragon clans?" The dragon nobles laughed with him. It was a sound like rocks grinding together, harsh and mocking. "We offer trade," Lyra said, "knowledge, alliance against common enemies, common enemies." Kaine leaned forward. "You mean the Ice Wraiths from the northern wastes?" "Yes, we have heard about your little problem. They have been raiding your villages, freezing your crops, killing your people. And now you come to us, begging for help." "We come to propose an alliance," Lyra corrected, "not to beg. There is no difference." Kaine stood, and the temperature in the room seemed to rise with him. "Your kingdoms are weak. You fight with iron swords and wooden shields. You hide behind stone walls that crumble. The Ice Wraiths are destroying you, and you have no way to stop them." He walked down from his throne, moving closer to Lyra. She held her ground, though he could see the effort it took. The heat near him was intense enough to make her skin flush red. "You need us," he continued. "You need our fire to melt their ice. You need our strength to break their armies. But why should we help you? What do we gain from saving kingdoms that mean nothing to us?" Lyra met his burning gaze directly. "Because the Ice Wraiths will not stop with the surface. Once they consume our lands, they will come for the volcanic depths. They seek to freeze the world, all of it. That includes your realm." "Let them try," Kaine said dismissively. "Dragon fire burns hot enough to melt anything they can throw at us." "Perhaps. But why fight them alone when you could have allies? Because allies are liabilities." Kaine circled around her, forcing her to turn to keep him in view. "They are weak points that enemies exploit. Better to stand alone and strong than together and vulnerable. That is a philosophy for those who trust no one. Trust must be earned, and your people have earned nothing but our contempt." Lyra's jaw tightened, the first sign of real anger. "If you hold us in such contempt, why agree to this meeting at all?" "Entertainment," Kaine said simply. "It amuses me to watch surface dwellers squirm in the heat. It amuses me to see them realize how powerless they truly are." The dragon nobles laughed again. Lyra's guards looked at each other nervously. The scholar behind her whispered that they should leave, that this was clearly pointless. But Lyra did not leave. She straightened her shoulders and looked directly at the Dragon Lord. "If you will not help us for strategic reasons, then name your price. What would it take for the dragon clans to join us against the Ice Wraiths? Kaine stopped circling. He had not expected this. Most surface dwellers gave up when faced with his mockery. They left angry or humiliated or both. But this woman was persistent. Interesting. My price, he said slowly, would be too high for you to pay. Try me. He smiled, showing teeth that could tear through steel. Very well, I will help you fight the Ice Wraiths. In exchange, you will marry me and become my consort. The chamber went silent. Even the crackling of the lava rivers seemed to quiet. Lyra stared at him, her expression frozen somewhere between shock and disbelief. What? She finally managed to say. You wanted an alliance between our peoples. Marriage is the traditional way to seal such agreements. You will live here, in the volcanic depths, as my consort. Your kingdoms will have the protection of the dragon clans, and I will have a surface dweller to remind me why my people are superior. This is insane, Lyra said. I came here as an ambassador, not as some prize to be claimed, and yet, here we are. Kaine returned to his throne. Those are my terms. Accept them, and your people live. Refuse, and I will watch from my mountain as the Ice Wraiths freeze every last one of them. The choice is yours, Ambassador. Lyra felt the weight of thousands of lives pressing down on her shoulders. She thought of the villages already destroyed, the families huddled in refugee camps, the children who would not survive another winter if the Ice Wraiths continued their advance. She thought of her duty, of the oaths she had sworn when she accepted the role of ambassador, and she thought of how much she wanted to refuse, to walk out of this chamber and never return. But she could not. Too many people depended on the Dragon Clan's help. Too many would die if she let pride dictate her answer. How long do I have to decide? She asked quietly. Until sunset tomorrow. Kaine waved his hand dismissively. Return to your quarters. Think carefully about what matters more, your personal comfort or your people's survival. Lyra was given quarters in the cooler outer chambers of the volcanic depths, rooms carved from stone but far enough from the lava flows that a human could survive without constant magical protection. She dismissed her guards and scholar, needing time alone to think. The room was sparse, a bed of stone covered with thick furs, a basin of water that steamed slightly from the residual heat in the walls, a single window that looked out over a landscape of black rock and flowing fire. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like watching a storm from a distance. She sat on the edge of the bed and put her head in her hands. Marriage to a dragon lord. The idea was absurd. Dragons and humans did not marry. They barely tolerated each other. The dragon clans had retreated to their underground realm 300 years ago after the Great Separation, when they decided that sharing the surface world with humans was beneath them. Since then, contact had been minimal, limited to occasional trade and even rarer diplomatic missions. And now, Kaine wanted her to become his consort, to live here, in this realm of fire and stone, bound to a creature who clearly despised everything she represented. But what choice did she have? The Ice Wraiths were unstoppable by conventional means. They were beings of pure winter, creatures that froze everything they touched. Armies sent against them returned as frozen statues. Mages who tried to combat them found their spells turned back on themselves, their blood crystallizing in their veins. Only dragonfire, the hottest flame in the world, could truly harm them. Without the dragons, the surface kingdoms would fall within a year. Maybe less. There was a knock at her door. Lyra composed herself before answering. Enter. A young dragon woman came in, her scales a pale gold that caught the light beautifully. She wore simple robes and carried a tray with food and drink. I am Sarah, she said. I've been assigned to attend to your needs during your stay. Thank you. Lyra took the tray. The food was strange, fruits and meats she did not recognize, but it smelled good, and she realized she was hungry. Sarah lingered near the door. If I may speak freely, Ambassador, please do. Lord Kaine's offer has caused quite a stir among the court. Many of the nobles think he is making a mistake. They say humans are too fragile to survive here, that you would not last a month. That is reassuring, Lyra said dryly. But others think, Sarah hesitated. Others think that perhaps it is time for our peoples to find common ground again. The world is changing. The old ways may not serve us much longer. And what do you think? I think Lord Kaine is more complicated than he appears. He is harsh and proud, yes, but he is also cunning. He does not make decisions lightly. If he offered this bargain, he has his reasons beyond simple amusement. Lyra considered this. Do you know why he hates surface dwellers so much? Sarah was quiet for a moment. His father was killed by human dragon hunters 50 years ago. They lured him to the surface with false promises of trade, then ambushed him with enchanted weapons. Lord Kaine found his body and brought it home. He was only a youngling then, barely a century old. He has hated your kind ever since. Understanding dawned. This is revenge, then. He wants a human consort so he can humiliate her, make her suffer as payment for his father's death. Perhaps. Or perhaps he wants to prove that humans and dragons can coexist, even in the most unlikely circumstances. Sarah bowed. I have said too much. Forgive me. Rest well, Ambassador. Tomorrow will be a difficult day. After Sarah left, Lyra lay awake long into the night, staring at the stone ceiling and trying to imagine a future where she lived in these chambers, bound to a dragon lord who despised her. She had always known that duty might require sacrifice. She had accepted the role of ambassador, understanding that her life was not entirely her own. But this was beyond anything she had imagined. Finally, as exhaustion began to claim her, she made her decision. She would accept. Not for herself, but for all the people who would die without dragonfire to protect them. She would endure whatever humiliation Kaine had planned. She would survive this somehow. And perhaps if she was clever and strong enough, she would find a way to turn this situation to her advantage. The next morning, Lyra returned to the throne room at dawn. Kaine was already there, as if he had never left. The dragon nobles were fewer in number this early, but those present watched her with predatory interest. I have made my decision, Lyra announced. Her voice echoed in the vast chamber. I accept your terms, Lord Kaine. I will marry you and become your consort. Kaine showed no surprise. He had expected this answer. Of course you do. You have no other choice. I have many choices, Lyra replied sharply. I choose this one because I value the lives of my people more than my own comfort. Do not mistake necessity for weakness. Bold words. Let us see if you can maintain that boldness once you truly understand what you have agreed to. He stood and descended from his throne. When shall we hold the ceremony? Tonight. There's no point in delaying. Besides, your people are dying while we speak. The sooner we formalize this alliance, the sooner I can send my warriors to burn the Ice Wraiths from your lands. Tonight, then. Lyra refused to show the fear that twisted in her stomach. What do I need to prepare? Nothing. You will wear what I provide. You will say the words I teach you. You will stand before the dragon clans and bind yourself to me with vows that cannot be broken. He leaned closer. And you will do it with grace, Ambassador. I will not have my consort showing weakness before my people. I understand. Good. Sarah will help you prepare. The ceremony will begin at sunset. Lyra was led away by Sarah, who seemed sympathetic but offered little comfort. The hours passed in a blur. She was bathed in water, heated to near boiling. Her hair was arranged in elaborate braids, intertwined with small gems that glowed with internal fire. She was dressed in robes of deep red and black, colors that marked her as belonging to Kaine's clan. The fabric was strange, woven from something that felt like silk, but was warm to the touch, almost alive. When she looked at herself in the polished obsidian mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked like a dragon bride from ancient legends, beautiful and doomed. You look magnificent, Sarah said softly. Lord Kaine will be pleased. Will he? Lyra touched the gems in her hair. Or will he simply find new ways to mock me? Time will tell, Ambassador. But I will say this. You are braver than most. I have seen grown dragon warriors tremble before Lord Kaine. Yet you stand firm. That is worth something. The ceremony was held in the Grand Cavern, a massive space at the heart of the volcanic depths where the greatest lava river flowed. Hundreds of dragons attended, filling the chamber with scales that glittered like treasure. They watched as Lyra entered, escorted by dragon guards, walking toward the platform where Kaine waited. He had transformed to his full dragon form for the ceremony. He was enormous, easily the size of a building, with scales that looked like they had been forged from volcanic glass and steel. His wings were folded against his back, but when he shifted slightly, they created wind that made the torches flicker. His eyes, still glowing like coals, fixed on Lyra as she approached. She felt small, insignificant, human in the worst way, fragile and temporary compared to the immortal creature before her. But she did not falter. She climbed the steps to the platform and stood before him, tilting her head back to meet his gaze. A dragon priest began the ceremony, speaking in a language that was old when the mountains were young. Lyra spoke the vows she had been taught, promising loyalty, partnership, and unity between their peoples. The words felt heavy on her tongue, weighted with magic that made them binding. Kaine spoke his own vows, his voice shaking the chamber. He promised protection, strength, and fire to defend what was his. When he said the word as while looking at Lyra, she felt the weight of ownership in it. Then came the binding ritual. Kaine shifted back to his humanoid form, still massive, but at least on a scale where they could interact. He took her hand in his skin burning hot, and a dragon priest wrapped their joined hands with a chain of gold that had been heated in dragon fire until it glowed. The pain was immediate and intense. Lyra bit down on her lip to keep from crying out as the hot metal seared her skin. She would not give Kaine or his court the satisfaction of seeing her break. Kaine watched her face carefully. The pain was part of the ritual, a test. Most humans would have screamed or pulled away, breaking the binding, but Lyra stood firm, her hand locked in his, accepting the burn. When the chain was removed, it left a mark on both their hands, a scar in the shape of interlocking flames, the physical manifestation of their bond. "It is done," the priest announced. "Lord Kaine and Ambassador Lyra are bound in the eyes of fire and stone. What the flames have joined, let no one separate." The dragon court erupted in roars that shook the cavern. Whether it was approval or mockery, Lyra could not tell. Kaine pulled her close, his burning eyes searching her face. "You did not scream," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "Most surface dwellers cannot endure the binding chain without breaking." "I am not most surface dwellers," Lyra replied through gritted teeth. Her hand throbbed with pain, but she refused to acknowledge it. "No, you are not." Something flickered in his expression, too quick to identify. "Come, we must present ourselves to the court." The feast that followed was a trial in itself. Lyra sat beside Kaine at the high table, forced to eat strange foods and drink wine that burned going down. Dragon nobles approached throughout the night, some offering congratulations that dripped with sarcasm, others openly questioning why their lord had bound himself to such a weak creature. Through it all, Kaine said nothing in her defense. He simply watched, assessing how she handled each insult, each veiled threat. Lyra maintained her composure through sheer force of will. She answered mockery with courtesy, met threats with calm dignity. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break, no matter how much she wanted to flee this place of fire and cruelty. Late in the night, a massive dragon warrior named Vex approached the table. He was covered in battle scars, and his scales were a dark bronze that suggested great age. "Lord Kaine," he said with a mocking bow, "I notice your new consort has not yet been tested in combat. Surely we should see if she has any strength beyond her words." "She is a diplomat, not a warrior," Kaine replied. "Leave it alone, Vex, but how will she survive here if she cannot even defend herself? The volcanic depths are dangerous. Perhaps I should teach her some basic fighting skills." He smiled, showing far too many teeth. "I promise to be gentle." The challenge was clear. Vex wanted to humiliate her, to prove that humans had no place in dragon society. Lyra stood before Kaine could respond. "I accept your offer, warrior Vex. When shall we begin these lessons?" The court went silent. Even Kaine looked surprised. Vex laughed. "Now?" "We begin now, little human. Let us see what you are made of." The combat training grounds were adjacent to the Grand Cavern, a circular space with a floor of smooth volcanic stone. Dragon warriors trained here daily, honing skills that had been perfected over millennia. Now the space filled with spectators, eager to watch the human consort be put in her place. Vex stood at the center of the circle, still in his humanoid form but radiating barely contained power. Lyra faced him, still wearing her ceremonial robes, her burned hand throbbing. "The rules are simple," Vex announced. "First one to yield or leave the circle loses. No killing strikes, but everything else is permitted." "Understood," Lyra said calmly. They began. Vex moved first, faster than anything his size should be able to move. He struck at Lyra with a punch that would have shattered stone, but Lyra was not there. She had trained with the best warriors in the surface kingdoms, learning that speed and agility could overcome raw strength. She dodged, rolled, came up behind him and struck at the back of his knee. Her strike did nothing. It was like hitting iron. Vex barely felt it. He spun and grabbed for her. She ducked under his arm, used his own momentum to throw him off balance. It was not enough to drop him, but it made him stumble. The crowd murmured. The human had actually made the great Vex stumble. Vex's eyes narrowed. He stopped toying with her. His next series of strikes came fast and precise, forcing Lyra to give ground. She blocked what she could, dodged what she could not, but one punch got through and caught her shoulder. The impact sent her sprawling. Pain exploded through her body. Nothing broken, but close. She rolled to her feet, breathing hard. "Yield, human," Vex said. "You have shown courage. That is enough." "No." Lyra steadied herself. "I am not finished." What she did next was desperate. She ran straight at Vex, ducked under his guard, and struck at his throat with 2 fingers. It was a pressure point technique, useless against dragon scales normally, but she was not aiming for scales. She aimed for the small patch of softer skin just below his chin, a vulnerability that existed in humanoid form. Her strike connected. Vex's eyes widened in shock as his breath caught. For just a moment, he could not breathe. That moment was all Lyra needed. She swept his legs and actually succeeded in dropping him. The great warrior fell onto his back, and Lyra pressed her advantage, putting her knee on his chest and her hand at his throat. "Yield," she said. The entire training ground was silent. A human had just put a sur-taunt dragon warrior on his back. Then Vex started laughing. It began as a wheeze, then grew into a full booming laugh that echoed off the walls. He tapped the ground 3 times, the traditional signal of surrender. "I yield," he said, still laughing. "By the eternal flames, I yield to a human barely taller than a youngling." Lyra stepped back, offering her hand to help him up. Vex took it, his massive hand engulfing hers, and pulled himself to his feet. "You fight well, little consort," he said with genuine respect. "You used my strength against me. You found my weakness and exploited it. These are the marks of a true warrior." "I learned from necessity," Lyra replied. "When you cannot overpower your enemies, you must outsmart them." Vex nodded approvingly, then turned to the crowd. "Let it be known that Lord Kaine's consort has the heart of a dragon, even if she wears human skin. Any who doubt her place here will answer to me." The crowd's murmur changed tone. It was no longer mockery, but something closer to grudging respect. Kaine had watched the entire exchange in silence. Now he approached Lyra, his expression unreadable. "That was foolish," he said. "Vex could have killed you with one careless strike." "But he did not," Lyra replied. "And now your court knows that I am not helpless. You are still weak, still human." "Yes, but I am also your consort, and I will not be dismissed or mocked without consequence." For the first time since they met, Kaine smiled. It was not a cruel smile. It was something else, something almost like approval. "Come," he said. "Your hand needs treatment. That burn must be painful." He led her away from the training grounds, back through the winding corridors to her chambers. Once there, he summoned healers who applied ointments that smelled of sulfur and herbs. The pain in her hand faded to a dull ache. When the healers left, Kaine remained. He stood by the window, looking out at his realm of fire. "You surprised me tonight," he said finally, "multiple times." "Good." Lyra sat on the edge of her bed, exhausted. "I would hate to be predictable. Most humans would have yielded to Vex immediately. Many would not have accepted his challenge at all. I am not most humans. And if I am to survive here, I cannot show weakness. Your court would eat me alive." "Yes, they would." He turned to face her. "That is why I offered you no help tonight. You needed to prove yourself without my intervention." "So this was a test." "Everything is a test here, Lyra. The volcanic depths are not kind to the weak. If you cannot hold your own, you will not last long." Lyra met his burning gaze. "Then I will hold my own, whatever it takes. We shall see." Kaine moved toward the door. "Rest. Tomorrow the real work begins. We have an army to organize and ice wraiths to burn from your lands." He left, and Lyra was alone again. She lay back on the stone bed, every muscle aching, her hand throbbing despite the healing ointments. She thought about the day, about the vows she had spoken, about the fight she had won. And she thought about the way Kaine had smiled, just for a moment, as if he had seen something in her that he had not expected to find. Perhaps this arrangement would not be entirely unbearable after all. The next weeks were brutal. Kaine did not ease Lyra into her new role. Instead, he threw her into the deep end, forcing her to adapt or fail. Each morning, she trained with dragon warriors, learning to fight in ways that utilized her speed and precision rather than strength she did not possess. Vex became her primary instructor, and though he was harsh, he was also fair. He taught her how to identify dragon weak points, how to use magical augmentation to enhance her strikes, how to survive in combat against creatures that were fundamentally superior in raw power. Each afternoon, she studied with dragon scholars, learning the history and politics of the dragon clans. She learned about the ancient wars that had shaped their society, about the complex clan relationships, about the reasons they had chosen isolation 3 centuries ago. And each evening, she attended court functions with Kaine, standing at his side as nobles and warriors alike tested her with words and challenges. She learned to navigate dragon politics, which were somehow even more treacherous than surface court intrigue. Through it all, Kaine watched. He rarely praised her successes, but he noted them. When she mastered a difficult fighting technique, he would assign her a harder one. When she successfully navigated a political conversation, he would throw her into a more challenging situation. He was pushing her, testing her limits, seeing how far she could bend before breaking. But Lyra did not break. She had too much pride for that, too much responsibility to her people. And slowly, grudgingly, the dragon clans began to accept her presence. 1 month after the wedding, Kaine finally announced that the dragon army was ready to march to the surface and engage the Ice Wraiths. A force of 500 dragon warriors, the largest mobilization in 3 centuries, would accompany him to the northern wastes. "You will remain here," Kaine told Lyra the night before departure. "The volcanic depths will be defended by a skeleton force while the main army is away. I need someone I trust to keep order in my absence." "No." Lyra stood from where she had been sitting. "I am coming with you. You are not a soldier. I am your consort, your partner in this alliance. If you go to fight for my people, then I go as well. You will slow us down. You will be a liability. Then leave me behind on the battlefield if I cannot keep up. But I am coming, Kaine. This is not negotiable." They stared at each other, wills clashing. Finally, Kaine turned away. "Fine. But you will follow my commands without question. If I tell you to stay back, you stay back. If I tell you to retreat, you retreat. Understood?" "Understood." The journey to the surface took 3 days. The dragon warriors flew, their massive wings, carrying them through underground caverns and then up through volcanic vents to the open sky. Lyra rode on Kaine's back, secured by enchanted straps, experiencing flight for the first time in her life. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The ground fell away below them, the world spreading out in a vast tapestry of forests, mountains, and plains. She had never seen her homeland from this perspective, had never understood how small individual kingdoms looked when viewed from above. The Ice Wraiths had established their stronghold in the northern wastes, a desolate region of frozen tundra and ancient ice. As the dragon army approached, the temperature dropped dramatically. Frost formed on Lyra's clothes, despite the heat radiating from Kaine's scales. They landed on a ridge overlooking the Wraith encampment. Below, Lyra could see thousands of the creatures, beings of pure winter energy that had taken vaguely humanoid shapes. They glowed with a pale blue light, and everywhere they moved, ice spread. "There," Kaine said, pointing with a clawed hand, "their leader, the Winter King." At the center of the encampment stood a massive wraith, easily 3 times the size of the others. It wore a crown of frozen lightning and carried a staff of pure ice that seemed to drink in the light around it. "If we destroy him, the rest will scatter," Kaine continued, "but getting to him means fighting through his army." "Then we fight," Lyra said simply. Kaine looked at her. "For all your training, you have never experienced true battle. What comes next will be unlike anything you have faced." "I know." She checked her weapons, enchanted blades that could channel heat. "But I am here, and I am ready." The battle began at dawn. The dragon warriors descended on the Ice Wraith army like a storm of fire. Flames filled the sky, melting ice and sending wraiths shrieking back into the void from which they came. The wraiths responded with waves of absolute cold, frost attacks that could freeze dragon blood in their veins. Lyra fought alongside Vex and a squad of dragon warriors on the ground. Her role was not to match them in raw combat ability, but to use her smaller size and speed to slip through enemy lines and strike at critical targets. She targeted wraithcasters, the creatures that were coordinating the cold attacks, disrupting their formations, and giving the dragons openings to exploit. It was chaos. The noise was deafening, the cold bone deep despite the fires around her. She moved on instinct and training, her enhanced blades cutting through wraith energy, her movements precise and economical. She had no strength to waste on flashy techniques. A wraith materialized in front of her, its frozen hand reaching for her face. Lyra rolled under the attack, came up inside its guard, and drove both blades into its core. The creature shattered into ice crystals that evaporated in the heat. Another approached from behind. She spun, blocked its claws with crossed blades, then kicked it in what passed for a knee. As it fell, she finished it with a strike to the back. More came. She fought with the ruthless efficiency that Vex had drilled into her. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Strike, move, strike again. But there were too many. Even with dragonfire burning them by the hundreds, the wraiths kept coming. And slowly, inevitably, they were being pushed back. Lyra saw Kaine in the distance, in his full dragon form, breathing fire that turned wraiths to steam. He was magnificent and terrible, a force of nature made flesh. But even he was being swarmed, dozens of wraiths climbing on him, trying to freeze his wings, his throat. She ran toward him, shouting for Vex to follow. Together, they cut through the wraiths surrounding their lord, giving him space to shake off the attackers and take to the air again. "You should not be here," Kaine roared at her, his voice audible even over the battle. "Neither should you be drowning in wraiths," Lyra shouted back. "Now burn them and get back in the fight." Something that might have been a laugh rumbled in his chest. Then he unleashed a torrent of fire that cleared a 20-meter radius around them. The battle raged for hours. Lyra lost track of time, lost track of how many wraiths she had killed. Her arms ached, her legs trembled with exhaustion, her lungs burned from breathing in air filled with smoke and frost. But she kept fighting because stopping meant dying. Finally, as the sun reached its peak, Kaine made his move. He gathered a dozen of his strongest warriors and dove straight at the Winter King, breaking through its guard through sheer force and firepower. The clash between Kaine and the Winter King shook the battlefield. Fire met ice in explosions of steam and power. The Winter King's staff created blizzards that tried to extinguish dragon flame. Kaine's claws raked across frozen armor, seeking vulnerable points. Lyra saw her opening. While the two titans fought, the Winter King's back was exposed. She ran, faster than she had ever moved, enhancing her speed with every scrap of magic she could channel. Dragon warriors saw what she was doing and created a corridor for her, burning away wraiths that tried to intercept. She reached the Winter King and leaped, using a dragon warrior's shoulder as a springboard, soaring up to the creature's back. Her blades, superheated to white-hot intensity, drove into the joint where the Winter King's left arm met its torso. The creature screamed, a sound like glaciers calving, and stumbled. Kaine saw his chance and struck, his jaws closing around the Winter King's throat, his fire pouring directly into the creature's core. The Winter King shattered, not slowly, not gradually, but all at once, exploding into a billion fragments of ice that rained down on the battlefield. Without their leader, the remaining wraiths panicked. They broke formation and fled, retreating north toward regions where even dragons would not follow. The battle was won. Lyra collapsed where she stood, unable to move another step. Vex caught her before she hit the ground. "You did well, little consort," he said, pride clear in his voice. "Very well indeed." She tried to respond but lacked the energy. Everything hurt. She had cuts and bruises everywhere, frostbite on her fingers despite her enchanted gloves, and she was pretty sure at least one rib was cracked. Kaine landed nearby, transforming back to humanoid form. He was injured too, cuts and burns covering his scales, but he moved with purpose. He took Lyra from Vex, lifting her easily. "Stubborn human," he said, but his voice lacked its usual edge. "I told you this would be unlike anything you had faced." "Was I wrong to come?" she asked weakly. "No." His answer surprised her. "You were exactly where you needed to be. Your strike gave me the opening I needed. You may have saved many lives today." "Just doing my duty," she managed to say before exhaustion claimed her and she passed out. When Lyra woke, she was back in the volcanic depths, in her chambers. Her injuries had been treated, her body wrapped in bandages infused with healing magic. She felt sore, but alive. Sarah was there, sitting beside her bed. "Welcome back, Ambassador. You have been asleep for 2 days." 2 days? Lyra tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as pain shot through her ribs. "Yes. Lord Kaine had you brought back immediately after the battle. He has been checking on you every few hours, though he pretends he's just passing by coincidentally." That brought a small smile to Lyra's face. "How goes the aftermath?" "The Ice Wraith army is shattered. The surface kingdoms are safe, at least for now. The Alliance has proven its worth." Sarah poured a cup of water and helped Lyra drink. "You are being called a hero in the surface kingdoms. They say a human woman stood beside dragons and helped bring down the Winter King. I just did what needed to be done. That is what heroes always say." Sarah smiled. "Rest more. You have earned it." Over the next weeks, as Lyra recovered, she noticed a change in how the dragon clans treated her. The mockery had stopped entirely. When she walked through the corridors, warriors nodded respectfully. When she attended court, nobles actually listened to her opinions. She had proven herself in the way that mattered most to dragons, through courage in battle. But the biggest change was in Kaine himself. He still pushed her, still challenged her, but there was a new quality to his attention. He began spending time with her outside of formal duties. They would walk through the volcanic depths together, and he would show her the beauty in his realm that she had missed before. The gardens of fire flowers that bloomed in lava, the caverns where gems grew like stars, the archives containing dragon knowledge spanning 50,000 years. They talked about deeper things too. Kaine spoke about his father's death, about the anger and grief that had shaped him. Lyra spoke about her own losses, about the pressures of duty, about the fear she had felt walking into the throne room that first day. "I thought you were going to eat me," she admitted one evening as they stood on a balcony overlooking a lava river. "I considered it," Kaine said. "You were so small and determined. It was almost insulting." "Almost?" "Almost. But then you kept surviving everything I threw at you. You won the respect of my warriors. You matched wits with my scholars. You fought beside us against the Winter King." He looked at her. "You are the most stubborn creature I have ever met." "Is that a compliment?" "From a dragon, yes. We value stubbornness highly." Lyra laughed, and Kaine found himself enjoying the sound. "I misjudged you," he said quietly. "When you first came here, I saw only a weak human, someone to be used and dismissed. But you are not weak. You are strong in ways I did not expect. You bend but do not break. That is a rare quality." "You misjudged me," Lyra agreed. "But I misjudged you as well. I thought you were simply cruel, that you enjoyed suffering. But you were testing me, pushing me to become stronger because you knew I would need that strength to survive here." "We both made assumptions," Kaine said. "Perhaps it is time we stopped assuming and started actually knowing each other." "That seems wise." He reached out and took her hand, careful of his heat. The scar from their binding ritual glowed faintly on both their palms. "This was supposed to be a political arrangement," he said. "A marriage of convenience to seal an alliance, nothing more. And now I find myself caring whether you survive the day. I find myself proud when you succeed. I find myself angry when others insult you. These are not feelings I intended to have." Lyra squeezed his hand. "I feel the same." You infuriate me. You challenge me constantly. You make my life more difficult than it has any right to be. And yet I cannot imagine being anywhere else. This is highly inconvenient, extremely inconvenient." She smiled. "What shall we do about it? I suppose we could try actually being married instead of simply pretending for political purposes." "That sounds terrifying." "Yes, it does." Kaine pulled her closer. "Are you willing to try anyway?" "I faced the Winter King," Lyra said. "I can face this too." He kissed her then, and despite the heat of his skin, despite the difference in their forms, it felt right. Natural. Like two pieces that had been fighting to fit together had finally found their proper alignment. When they broke apart, Lyra asked the question that had been bothering her. "Why did you really offer this bargain? You could have sent your army to fight the Ice Wraiths without demanding I marry you." Kaine was quiet for a long moment. "Because I was tired of hating," he finally said. "My father's death filled me with rage against humans. That rage kept me warm through many cold years, but rage is a poor companion in the long term. It consumes everything it touches." He looked out at his realm. "When you walked into my throne room, so determined and brave, I saw a chance to prove that my hatred was justified, that humans truly were weak and pathetic, or a chance to be proven wrong. I think, deep down, I wanted to be proven wrong. And was I? Proven wrong about humans. You were proven wrong about this human at least. That is a start." In the throne room, Empress Sarah, who was not actually a servant but Kaine's younger sister and second in command, smiled to herself. Her brother had needed someone to challenge him, to break through the walls of grief and anger he had built. The stubborn ambassador had done exactly that. Perhaps, she thought, there was hope for the future, after all. Hope that dragons and humans could forge a new path together, stronger for their differences rather than divided by them. Lyra and Kaine stood together on the balcony as the sun set, watched by no one, needing no audience. Two people from different worlds who had been forced together by necessity and had found something neither expected. Not love at first sight, not a fairy tale romance, but something real. Something earned through struggle and respect and the gradual realization that strength comes in many forms. The alliance between dragons and humans was sealed not just in political treaty, but in the genuine bond between a dragon lord who learned to respect human resilience and an ambassador who learned that pride could coexist with compassion. And in the years that followed, their union became the foundation for a new era, one where ancient powers and young civilizations worked together, where fire and flesh found common ground, and where two hearts that should never have beat in rhythm learned to share the same song.